proposals, and they were each chosen, thank you, through the G8 technical review. I'm fortunate to have worked with this team during USAID's Food Security Open Data Initiative and partnership with Todd Park's office as part of the first U.S. Government Development Data Jam. This team has a platform of global data for local use and their own video game for agriculture impact. Please welcome, first up, Dr. Phil Parker.
Okay, good morning, everybody. What I'd like to do is start with an observation. Have any of you ever gone to an American bookstore and you notice there's a huge self-help section? It's massive. When you go to France, however, you'll notice they have a self-help section, but there's much less books. And you might conclude that the Americans are just needing a lot of help and are flipped out or something, and the French are centered. It turns out there's just less people who speak French. So the economics of publishing in the French language are just not as good as publishing in the English language. When you start driving it down even farther, and you go to Arabic, you get even less titles published. When you start going down to local languages, you get even less titles published. In fact, most of the world's languages don't have anything published in them in the field of agriculture. And I've been working on a lot of literacy projects in that domain, and was observed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who decided to apply some of our local language learning issues to the field of agriculture, and something called totoagriculture.org was born. Imagine there's a researcher at the University of California, Davis, and she has discovered some wonderful method of curing a plant pest or disease. That might be published in an A journal in English, and it sits there for a while. However, the person that's most likely to be impacted by that little bit of information might be in Madagascar or in Malawi or Kenya, who doesn't read A journals, does not speak English, and may not even speak the national language. Here's what we did. We got together a group of priority clients. One was the Grameen Foundation in Uganda. The other one was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Farmer Voice Radio, Farm Radio International, and the GSM Association, the Association of All Mobile Phone Operators in the world, covering about 180 countries. Each one had their own requirements for data for farmers. Question, what should we cover? Rather than doing the intersection of these desires, we decided to do the union of all of them together, to synthesize all agricultural knowledge, no matter what the topic might be, and put it into formats that people could possibly use, hence Toto Agriculture. We started with professors at the University of Wageningen and a bunch of other professors, and discovered vetted sources of information that were both local and global in nature. We then put them into what we call an agricultural content engine. That engine then spits out data to different partner organizations who wanted them in different formats for the end user farmers. So it looks something like this. The client, of course, is the end user farmers. They might be approached by radio stations, television stations, SMS, IVR, voice response systems, etc. And what we ultimately discovered was this agricultural content engine you see in the middle here would have to actually produce a plethora of different formats. And we decided to be agnostic. If someone thought a format was good to use, we just decided to do it. And so we aggregated over 750 agricultural resources and then output something like 50 to 60 different formats. One data point alone might have required 104 sources just to give us what the local knowledge would be about that particular spot. So what we're going to do is show you three versions of this ACE, or agricultural content engine. The first one is now being used in Malawi, Kenya, and Uganda for rural radio stations. These are radio stations that don't have a production crew like CNN in the back room. Rather, what they need is a dashboard where they can pull up relevant agricultural knowledge and then have radio programming about that knowledge. Also, it's being used in call centers. For example, in Uganda, for Grameen Foundation is using our dashboard for call centers. The format that they wanted to have looks something like this. And Kat gave us a 90-day challenge, and Todd Park, about coming up with something. I'd invite you to replace the word Ethiopia with your country. We've created 180 dashboards, one per country. This happens to be the home page of that dashboard. When you drill down in, you'll notice that you'll see weather forecasts. For structured data like weather, we include about 100 different languages. We had 120 translators come up with all weather, also soil profiles and menus. This is an example of a soil profile. Various tips in very short formats in some cases because they're used in SMS, tip of the day systems that are being used in farmer voice radio systems. You also have facts sheets on pests and diseases. Again, these were translated in some of the major languages where the partner organizations were willing to fund it. Bottom line, we tried to create a portal where state-of-the-art agricultural knowledge is just one language away from the local farmer. I'd like to highlight crop calendars. This is the most popular. A radio station can look down a month and figure out what should be the most important thing to broadcast at that moment. And it's a very useful tool. When you click on one of the colors, it may stand for weeding. All of a sudden, a bunch of tips and advice comes up about weeding. These are video formats of the same data. This is a game show that's being used at the village level, a mobile trivia challenge with a tomato named Tom E. Tomato, which is a breed of tomato. He's the hero. We also have smartphone and dumb phone videos that can be downloaded on the cheapest Huawei mobile phone, and this is a weather report for low literacy environments. We also created formats, if I can get this, of tip of the day. And this happens to be an English language tip of the day, going to English language speakers, learning about cattle breeding. So this is what we've discovered, that formats are very important. What I'd like to do is introduce Sean Obitz, who's now going to discuss with you a CKW, Community Knowledge Worker application that'll sit on an Android device. And before I go, please visit us in the hallway where you can see examples of what we have, including a fact sheet that gives you all the information of the data that we've aggregated. You can feel free to use that when you'd like. So Sean, if I can hand this off to you. Here you go. Clicker should work.
Hi, thank you. So you've seen how this content can be used on a browser-based platform, but what I'd like to show you is how this can be used on a mobile platform, because many of our clients had the same requests, and what they wanted was they wanted a way that they could easily deploy this information onto an inexpensive device that they could take to the field with them. And thus, the Universal CKW app, the Community Knowledge Worker app, was born. So while this runs through, I'd like to just talk about the content here. We call it the Universal app, but you'll notice here this is actually an example of an Ethiopian application for it. Because the content is so large, it has to be pared down in a way we can actually deploy it onto an inexpensive device. The ways we do that is with some compression mechanisms and database normalization, but the most important is through localization. This localization can be done by a city or by country or crop type, perhaps a livestock type, or even down to a rural village level, or some sort of combination or permutation of these things. In this way, we can actually pare down the data from 1 terabyte just to several megs, which can be deployed onto an Android device. While it runs through, I'd like to talk about a couple of the features here. One of our most popular features is the weather feature. So using the GPS device that's actually embedded in most smartphones and tablet devices, we can get the longitude and latitude of the user's location, and we can use that to determine the best polling location of one of our 83,000 locations. These actually go down to very, very rural village locations. Another very useful feature of this is the soil diagnostics. So what this essentially is a way to go step by step through, determine your soil type, and realize the problems, the challenges associated with it, and be offered some tips and suggestions to mitigate these problems. This becomes incredibly useful when you can actually bring it to the field and step by step through it. You can imagine. We're actually in a beta testing phase on this. So if you're interested in being part of that, if you'd like to sign up to be notified when this becomes available, we'd be happy to share it with you. This is, again, open content. We brought much of the dashboard content in here, including the climate statistics, the soil statistics, which come from the Harmonized World Soil Database, which is an excellent open data source. We bring in the crop calendars, as you can see. We have health, livestock tips, plant tips, pest and disease information, and we also have a glossary of scientific terms, because this is essentially encyclopedic content in your pocket. With that, I would like to turn this over to a more visually exciting presentation of this exact same content, and I'd like to introduce Paul Parker.
Thanks, Sean. Let's see if I get this. All right. Next one. All right. So the third version of the dashboard that we've created is a high-end 3D game called Farm Defenders Africa. Now, the the mission of this, the main goal of this, our catchphrase is, if you can't beat this game, you're not qualified for the job. And so our motivation behind this project was that, well, folks of my generation don't have very good attention spans, and also they're not really interested in agriculture. So we kind of wanted to create something that's really engaging, that makes people want to learn about agriculture, and so that they have fun doing so. Now, in this game, we have levels that span across Africa. And so in this case, what happens is for each level, there's unique, you can see unique features and unique challenges faced by the farmers there, different farming practices, and this introduces a bunch of different gameplay mechanics across these levels to give players a good flavor of the different techniques used across Africa. Now, what's really interesting about this, though, is that all these levels are tailored with the dashboard data, so all the relevant climate data, the soil conditions, the soil types, the pests and diseases for the crops that are grown there, the crop calendar associated with those crops in that region. And what's great about this is we have a series of levels here, but it could be tailored for any region. So instead of having a general Africa map, we could have instead a specific Malawi or Kenya map, and levels within that would be then specific villages or regions in that country. And so this game essentially is a template that can be scaled for any number of countries or different areas, which is really powerful if we want content for a specific area. Now, we've had great feedback from this. Players have just had a blast playing it. We've had African farmers play this. We've had farm extension workers play this. We've had grad students studying agriculture play this, and they can't wait to get their hands on the final version. We're in beta right now. We're finalizing the last few details, and we're taking any feedback we can get. If you're interested, please come check us out at our booth. We have versions there for you to play and comment on. And yeah, thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
It's amazing stuff. And that site, Toto Agriculture, is just an incredible trove of information, and all of it deserves to be made more accessible. So I hope you all go look. If you're online, go check it out.